points are going to be organizing and utilizing data as fuel for smart cities, digital identity, driving new integrated services, and approach to data security. And for this, I would like to call in on stage Mr. Kaveh Vasali, Data Practice Lead from NXN, Senior Vice President, ICT Solutions and Smart City Operations, EITC, Mr. Marwan bin Dalmouk. Managing Partner, Governance Dynamics, Mr. Fadi Sidani. Head of GSP System Engineering, Cisco, Mr. Mohammed Bakri. And to moderate your panel for this one, Marketing Leader, Global Business Services, IBM, Middle East and Africa, Mr. Osama Barkia.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining this afternoon panel. Thank you for being here today, and thanks to our dear panelists for joining me today. So the second day of the conference was about building the smart future. And I think we all agree here that building a smart future is a shared responsibility, it's a noble mission, and every one of us is trying and will contribute to build this smart future, not only for us, but for the next generation. But we heard through different conversations that building a smart future, we require that we start today to build these smarter cities across the globe, cities that will always work to improve the citizen experience and to offer better day-to-day activities to the citizens. And as simple as this statement might look like, putting it into practice is a very challenging task for governments and for partner private institutions. They are challenged every day with improving the program results, streamlining the service delivery, and strengthening the public safety, security, and resiliency. So in this today's knowledge-based, data-driven economy, it's really important for governments to have those tools to understand the trends and the predictions in vital areas such as education, employment, healthcare, transportation, and natural resources. So in today's panel around data governance in smart cities, we're going to hear from our dear experts here about the challenges we're having around having this data and utilizing it for the best of building the smarter cities for a smart future. So without further ado, I would start with you, Kaveh, with a very basic question I think we heard today. What is a smarter city and why it is important to have data as fuel for smart city?
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here. So yeah, let me start with just a little bit. I am an urban planner and economist by background. I'm not a technologist, so I approach this problem maybe from the other angle, which is the side of the city itself and the people in the city. So let's just start with what is a city. In essence, is just a system of systems delivering services to those in it, who reside there, who visit there, who work there, who invest there. And so there's essentially two things. To make a city smart, you have to A, understand the needs of those people using it, and B, make sure that the systems are connected, are communicating well. It all boils down to the flow of information, getting information to the right place, to the right person at the right time to make decisions, whether it's a government decision maker, or a business person, or an end user navigating their way around the city. So if you think of it that way, the thing that is flowing to make the bigger thing work better, data and the city, make it the fuel. So information is clearly the fuel of a smart city because in the end, the city, in order to be smart, is all about providing a better experience to those people in it.
So what do we mean by organizing and utilizing data?
Sure. So yeah, the next question becomes, can we just grab the data we have and start using it? And for anyone who's tried, you realize the first thing you learn trying to work with data is garbage in, garbage out. There's a lot of data around right now. Yeah. I'm an old guy. When I started this work, our problem was we didn't have enough data. As policy analysts, we didn't know where to get the data to figure out what to do. Now we have more data than we know what to do with. Our challenge is in managing it. Our challenge is in understanding that we need the 4 A's. We need the architecture, to actually manage and orchestrate this data on. We need to acquire the data. We need the acquisition. We have to know what we're getting, have it, go out and generate it if we need, understand its provenance, that it's good data, and manage that. Then, of course, we have to analyze it. That's the exciting part. We all get excited about that. And I would just add to that that it's not over then. Data can be used and reused. It has to be shared. It has to be openly published where appropriate. It has to be archived and reused. That's what we mean, I think, by managing and utilizing data.
Interesting for A approach. Thank you for this. Now, let me ask you this question. It seems that the data today is not helping us to create a smart city. What's the challenge? Why we are not able to use the data the way we want to build the smart cities we want?
So maybe to
Please.
to elaborate on this point, what we have seen with the across the globe is that you have entities in every city. They either have the data, but they are not really classifying these data. They are not really storing it in the right format where it can be utilized, as Kavi was saying. Plus, they are not having it in the right platform where it can be crossed and shared between each other. Finally, they have this, every entity, they have their own strategy to innovate, to go into a smart services. What is actually the smart services is actually how to innovate the service itself across the other entities.
Yeah.
So this is one of the challenges we have seen across the globe, that everybody is actually working in silos and they are not really collaborating and providing that platform.
Fadi, anything to add?
Yeah, I wanted to say that out of experience dealing with projects that's related to data utilization and interpretation, the big challenge was the classification of data, whether the cleansing of the data, and interpreting of the data in a proper way. So data does not interpret itself. The fact that you have a lot of information, in some form, you still need that kind of sense of wisdom that weighs in on the data that we have to make sure that you basically get out of it what you're looking for. It is, unless you give it a specific purpose, it tends to be highly generic. So, you need these experts. And above all, and as was said this morning, we talk about smart cities in what? So if you're focused on healthcare or in education or improving the grades of your students in certain subjects like math or physics or whatever, then your focus shifts towards that purpose and you interpret data in a different way. So there needs to be a methodology that is appropriately applied in identifying the data to be used, cleansing the data, interpreting the data, and one more thing that is very important is to measuring success throughout the process. This is what in my earlier panel I talked about. You need to define what are your key performance indicators for success, to be able to see whether you're moving in that right direction, considering that this is, relatively speaking, is an emerging area, and we're learning from it as we go through it.
Right. Absolutely. So, Mohammed, for many organizations today, the problem is not to have the data.
Right.
The problem is how to utilize this data, how to have those digital skills and capabilities to be able to get the best out of this data.
Yeah, but basically I need to comment on those points. This is really a challenge, and we have seen this challenge in so many organizations and public sector environment. And when we need to talk about this, we need to talk about the data quality first, right? Because what we have seen is most of the people are really facing challenges when it comes to data quality. And when we talk about data, specifically our data quality, we need to talk about 4 V's. So we need to talk about the volume. We have huge volumes, right? Today in the morning there was a presentation sees how we actually moved from a gigabyte to a terabyte to zettabyte to petabyte. Now we are in zettabyte, right? So we were talking about just lately about 10 years ago, we were talking about that the data was doubled every 10 years. Now data is doubled actually every 3 years. Now we're talking about data doubled every 2 years. and probably data will be doubled every 1 year. So the volume of data is really huge. This is the first V. Second V is basically the velocity. So we are getting data from everywhere inside the cities or from the organizations. Data, the amount, massive data that we are receiving in a very high speed, we need to deal with it in a timely manner as well. So this is another aspect of the other V, the second V, the velocity. Then we need to talk about the value, right? The value of the data itself, how we can get value out of this data, and how it is inversely proportional to the scale of the data itself. And basically the variety of data, which was very important. Specifically when we talk about smart city, we have variety of data coming from so many different services. Specifically with the rise of the intelligent services, intelligent public services, I would say. So we're getting data from Internet of Things, right? From transportation, from healthcare, from so many things that's coming. All these variety of data, and some of them are already structured, some of them are unstructured. So how we can get and build the platform that will take us to really get the benefit out of these data. So specifically, we talk about the urbanization and the urban data platform. So we need an urban data platform that will help us basically to get out the best out of these data that we are collecting from different sources. So, you know, the thing is, we have the data, but it's a silo. So everything is silos as we speak. So you'll find that there is some intelligence services in healthcare that's actually live alone. We have some other services coming from transportation, lives alone. So every single entity inside the government are living with its own. We need now to collect all this data and move from vertical to a horizontal approach, and this has been discussed today in the morning as well. So that's something that we're looking for in order to get really better use of the data.
Very good. So after the 4 A's, we have the 4 V's.
Right.
Yep.
Back to you. So, do you have anything to add on this?
I just wanted both of my colleagues just made some really important points. I want to connect them if I may. Fadi was talking about data needs to have a purpose, yeah? And this is critical. The whole point of managing information and sharing it is to solve a problem. We have to start with the use cases. We have to understand what use we're putting the information to. Spending all of our time trying to do some massive preparation, foundational work without specific problems we're trying to solve won't get us very far. And we can actually get very far pretty simply without terribly sophisticated technologies and without terribly sophisticated data science. If we understand the problems that we're trying to address, simple visualizations, a map can do the trick. This is about getting insights from knowing we have a real problem to solve and we have some information to solve it. So I think that's critical. Yep. The second point that Mohammed made was about treating data as an asset. So you asked Osama, how do we manage, what does it mean to manage the data? In a single nutshell, it's treating it as another asset. So if you look at most private sector organizations at this point, they understand what their assets are, and they're beginning to realize over the last decade that data is another one of those. That in and of itself, not just as a byproduct of the service they provide, but in and of itself, the data they have is a valuable asset that should be groomed and can, in fact, generate value and even revenue on its own. Cities and governments are in the same place. So if we manage data as an asset, we'll have good enough data. And if we then actually understand what our problems and use cases are, so we have a purpose for it, now we can put it to use. We're sitting in the middle, but we're not paying enough attention either to the user needs end or to the data management end.
All right.
Maybe to add one point here is that
Please.
Most of our attention today is on technologies. What kind of future, let's say, technologies that we need to look at today to solve the problems of the future. Where I feel like, as I agree with Kavi, is that the focus has to be exactly what is the use case. What is that innovative service that we need to create today to make sure that the citizens will have really a better life, a better services. So I totally agree, and just to get away of all the buzzwords today about the breakthrough technologies that we are hearing about today and focus on what we have in our hands of data.
Absolutely. Now, we cannot talk about data without talking about data privacy and data security. Do you have any examples or ideas of what's happening here in this region of the world about privacy and regulations around data?
Yeah, basically what we have seen lately that most of the government has started to move toward data privacy laws, right? So we have seen this started in Qatar, basically in the Middle East, if we're talking about Middle East in specific. Qatar actually, 2 years ago, they started to have a data privacy law, and then Bahrain joined the same, right, in last year. And lately, actually in August, or I think August, if I'm not mistaken, that has happened in Egypt as well. So it's, the data privacy law has started to be, something that's been discussed in public right now, in order to protect the data, the privacy of the citizens. And this is something that definitely cope with what's happening in Europe for the GDPR, right? It's, unfortunately, still we don't have something like the harmony of laws between the different countries, but at least there's some movement that started to happen. I'm not sure about Dubai, but I think in UAE they are discussing it, but I don't think there's a data privacy law yet, right?
Maybe to elaborate on this point, today we are governed by the telecommunication regulations. And we have very clear regulations about how to protect the data of our customers and how to treat this data and how to share this data if we would like to share the data. So we have very structured governance around the use of our customer data.
Okay. So that's happening as well, not only from the government side, but it happened also from the TRA side, from the regulatory's point of view. So regulatories have started to do this. In Saudi, they have actually, just recently, they also released a cloud computing framework that everybody has to comply to, specifically for the private cloud or keeping data in cloud service. And I'm pretty much sure that this is happening in UAE as well at the moment. Bahrain and Kuwait, they signed an MOU between each other in order to how they can keep data in cloud environment and how they can cross borders between both countries. So there's some movement happening in the region in order to replicate what has happened outside in Europe to keep protecting our privacy, our data privacy, specifically in the proliferation of the cloud computing and. So these days, nobody knows what's happening to his data, right? So, so we need to live peacefully in this world without being exposed to our data to someone else, right?
Exactly, to your point. If I am a citizen and provided my data, I need to understand who's going to take care of my data, what information will be used, who's going to make sure that my data is not overused or being abused in different ways. Fadi, what's your take on this?
I think having the right laws is very important. I think we're going to come to that. I think the regulators here, both in various industries, like we were talking about the TRA, and for example, as far as the telecom business is concerned, but you have also central banks, and the ESCA has been working on such rules. The thing is to realize is that it's not only the responsibility of the regulator, it's the responsibility of the entity itself to make sure that as part of its general better corporate governance, to make sure that they have a data privacy regulation within the organization itself. So they should not wait for the government and say, well, this is within the laws or not within the laws. They need to take into consideration the stakeholders' interests, which are mainly their customers and maybe the regulators at a later time, because this is a fast-moving business, and I don't think the regulators are up to speed with regards to this business as a whole. I'm talking the regulators as a whole. I'm not necessarily referring to the TRA. I'm just, because TRA is in the business as a regulator. We're talking about like central banks, ESCA, and other agencies, something of that sort. So it is the responsibility of in my view, of the organizations themselves, through their boards and better governance, to make sure that they have regulations within their structure that would deal with data privacy. By first identifying who are the key critical stakeholders. It's not their customers only, but also the customers of their customers, and working with those with that in mind. So.
Yeah, Kaveh, I know you're already working on something like this, a framework.
We have, yeah. So I think it's very important to distinguish two things. We've covered them both. And yeah, we did a lot of work here in Dubai starting 4 years ago with the Dubai data law, and we've worked with the TRA in developing the federal data standards here. We're doing similar work in Saudi. So I have a lot of contact over the last few years with this. there are two very different problems, and they have different answers, I think. On the one hand, you have a security issue that's about critical infrastructure, national security, physical security, and in general, the regulatory approaches and the best practices for the architecture and the securing of the systems will address those. That's a matter, I think, of finding the middle ground. You're not going to get value out of your data unless you share it and use it. You have to protect it enough to share it and use it without clamping down so hard that you can't share it and use it as appropriate. That's one problem. I think the privacy problem gets more interesting, and for me, all roads lead to sovereignty, to personal data sovereignty. And what I mean by that is everything we do should be towards developing a system where I, as an individual, not only know what you just described about what's happening with my data, but actually have a say in it, where I'm making conscious choices. I may allow you to use my data for certain purposes. I may not allow somebody else to without being compensated for it, etc. We need to be working towards a place where, as owners of our data, we have an active say into how it gets used, because there are ways I'm happy to have my data used. I'm happy to have my medical data used to help cure diseases. I'm happy to have the city study my travel patterns to do a better job of planning the city. There are other ways I'm not. And giving me the opportunity to actually govern that in real time is, I think, the key to getting over the privacy issue.
That's all right. Let's now talk about digital identity. Digital identity has emerged as one of the key, trending technologies of the smarter cities. I know, Marwan, you were telling me that at Do you started something at the Do level. Can you tell me a little bit about this and what we are trying to use digital identity to improve the citizens' experience in general?
So if we maybe start earlier, we've seen now a lot of applications are used in the social media. For example, they are using Google as a digital identity for them, and multiple applications. The same thing for the government. They would like to make sure that all the services that they are offering are governed, and there is a secured access. We know exactly who's using these services and access the services. So there is an initiative today by the TRA and the Smart Dubai office where they would like to centralize the UAE pass and create that solution. And Do and Itsad actually, as well as joining up together to create that platform where all the citizens in the UAE will be able to have a centralized digital identity where the use of all the services will be through a very secured platform.
All right. Mohammed, how do you see this opening new services for citizens through digital identity?
Yeah. First, when it comes to digital identity, there was even a recent report from GSMA that talks about how we use digital identity in smart cities. And they mainly, the report was mainly talking about two things, talking about biometrics and talking about blockchain, right?
Yeah.
So when we talk about biometrics, what we have seen so far is most of the people are still using their fingerprint, the legacy type of biometric that we started, that the only thing that exists today in the market, fingerprint or iris scanning for the. So these are the two stuff that's been using right now, but there is a big development happening at the moment for biometrics. So it looks like things have started to move toward DNA as well, and even people are talking about 3D analysis for the ear lobe, right?
Yeah.
So these are the stuff that started to be showing up from biometric perspective. So we need this in order to have, everybody has to have his own digital identity that he can use in, he can use in so many digital services that is offered today, specifically when we talk about voting, for example. So we don't have to go and wait for long queues and we start waiting in order to go in person for doctor visits or stuff like that. We need to move from the traditional way of subscribing to the services, even if it's an intelligent service, to something that can be used by this digital identity. I don't want to use a digital identity and at the same time I go still wait in queues, right? So to use my digital identity. I want to use this actually while I'm sitting at home or sitting at work. So that's the main thing. And we have seen this actually in one of the most prominent examples for this is Estonia, for example. So Estonia is #1 actually worldwide in using digital identity. Mostly 98% of the people over there are using their EID. And they are actually using the blockchain in this as well. So they were one of the main and first countries worldwide to use this in 2012. Just imagine, we were discussing blockchain 2 years ago, and still till today as well, we don't believe in it yet, right? But it's been used in country like Estonia, 2012. So people right now in 2016, they started to do e-voting. Yeah. So see how much the people are started to trust the system, and systems start to trust the people, right? So because of the proliferation of this digital identity, and definitely the blockchain is helping big time, and I think the blockchain will be the norm for the data management platform for all the urbanization or urban data platforms. And definitely the more we get people moving to cities, we need to use this digital identity. So as the prediction said that 70%, as you said also in the morning today, 70% of the people who are going to move to cities by 2050. 70%, just imagine. So we just need to trust the system somehow. I need to have all my services to be authenticated without I go in person. I want to have one single, me as a citizen, I want to have one single health record that's actually being used on all the hospitals. So I don't want to take my health record with me to another hospital in order to see. This has to be trusted in the system. In order to trust this, we need to adopt something like these digital identities.
A lot of possibilities with digital identity. Yep. So we spoke about data classification, data security, data sovereignty, and then we spoke about digital identity. If we put all those notions in the context of smart city, I'd like to hear from you, based on your experience and the project you worked on, what are the best examples, like the example from Estonia, either from the region or from the world, on cities adopting those technologies to always offer best citizen experience? Gavi.
So if I may, yeah, I think you led into this well, because the digital ID is such a critical foundational component to this, that the cities and nations that are starting without first addressing the digital ID are going to have a different and more challenging path. They'll be able to do some vertical things, smart parking here, smart waste management there, and we were just discussing before, it's hard to know without understanding your users' needs better if the smart parking thing you've done is even worth it. Is this a major problem for people? Or, is your smart waste management what they need? Or would they rather just have 3 bins so they know they're recycling? What feels better? So when you start with the digital ID, you can start to think comprehensively, because almost every single use case you think of, if it's consumer, citizen, constituent facing, you have to know who I am. You have to be able to personalize things in order to improve my experience. So I think the cities where we see the biggest impact from this smartification, if you will, are the places where we see the digital ID having been implemented well early. Estonia, Copenhagen, Stockholm, the Northern European countries are very good at this. Singapore getting there, Hong Kong getting there. But everything else that we see, the US and the UK for a while were fantastic about opening data, but you don't see a lot of services coming out of that, right? But places where you see the ID in place, you see the services. In those Northern European cities I was describing, including maybe Amsterdam, you have much more personalized services. You're able to do peer-to-peer money exchanges and banking. You're able to buy real estate and online with almost no offline activity because of the depth of the digital ID component. Those, to me, are the best examples moving forward.
Yeah, Fadi, if you have any other examples of innovative cities that really took all those technologies from IoT, cloud, blockchain, and really put them in the service of the citizen.
Nothing has come out as a major transformational example. There have been bits and pieces here and there where, for example, in Spain, this has been done successfully on the front end of the business, where where digital signature has allowed, and single sign-on and a lot of things have allowed companies basically to integrate in different industries. So you go into a supermarket and be able to to buy insurance and to do banking and to interact with your healthcare provider. So it created infinite possibilities, and I think what's going to lead into some kind of digital, if you will, conglomerates that can transform the businesses as we know it today. So today the businesses work in silos. They tend to be more or less in silos. It's going to change that to be more of digital conglomerates, affiliations within the groups, certain groups, and those who engaged early, the cities who engaged early are more likely to succeed and compete significantly better in the global village that we live in today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, back to this point, even Estonia, they created what they have called, I'm very fascinated with what those people have done. Actually, it's a great example, right? So those people actually did what they call KSI blockchain, right? So it's a keyless, back to the point of Fadi. So keyless signature infrastructure, no? They were the first one to do this. So everybody in the country have e-signature, right? So with no exception. And even now, we've heard recently about Sweden as well. They started to get into microchips under the skin, right? So people have started to use this digital identity somehow in a way or another in order to facilitate and ease the use of the intelligent public services that's available for us. But our call out is to how we can get all these services, right, centralized. We don't want to have many passwords and many identities, right? So how we can get the benefit out of these technologies in order to make our life easy, right? So what we need to avoid is what we have seen, at least lately, is most of the intelligent public services that we have today that people are investing heavily has a commercial agenda behind it, right? So most of the people, they want us to stay at home, right? And just one click to get the full fat, full sugar food with drones while we're sitting in our couches, and most likely you are immersed in a virtual reality game, right? Yeah. So we don't want to live in this. We need some collaboration between the public, private custodians, right, and the citizens and software developers, all of these to come together in a place that we can really get the benefit out of data, right? So we need a data-driven economy. We don't want a commercial or political environment to live in. This is something that we probably need to explore and see how we do this. And the very common example for this is the GPS, right? The global positioning system that has the US government have actually made it available for everyone in the world, free of charge. If you just have a GPS receiver, you can just get all the information, right? And based on this, it's a free of charge, something that's data-driven. And at the same time, you as an developer or startup company, you can build your own application that uses location-based services from the information you're getting out from this one. So these are the type of services that we need to get used instead of just having this kind of virtual reality that we don't live in.
I would like to make a comment, if I may. It's just something that's really important that has not come across in the last 2 days, which is related to sustainable development goals that's set by the United Nations. And I think they have come up with 17 goals, including combating poverty, better education, and better healthcare, and a whole lot of things, combating pollutions and whatever. And I think, as we talk about digital world, and I think things becoming smarter, and we also need to be cognizant of the corporate social responsibility that should come into the digital formula, because I think that will enable organizations that have been hesitant or not having it on their agenda as on either the city council or for the companies themselves to have it mainly on their agenda to drive better corporate social responsibilities. Right. And I think this digital world that we're living in now and transformation will make this a lot easier than before.
Agree. Now, one of the key challenges that we face when we talk about those data-driven digital transformation projects is the shortage of skills when it comes to data. What are you seeing both in public sector and private sector, and how can we find solutions to generate more skilled people around data projects?
Maybe to touch base on this, I believe that we almost go back into the academy and try to see that we need to have more curriculums. We need to have more people who have been graduated with data scientists, with the areas of the new technologies that we want. However, once these guys start producing this new generation, the technology has been changed. And they feel themselves, they are not really coping up with the new era. What I believe, and I know this is what we talked internally and do as well, is that we need to make sure that the current staff that we have keep self-learning, and they have to keep themselves really updated with the new technologies in the market. Today, education, it's e-learning. They can get this information very easily. With $10, he can get the best course from a website, and he can really be skilled at that area.
Right.
So I believe today we become more reluctant, ourselves and our employees as well, to keep themselves really updated, to keep themselves really educated. Sometimes they depend just to go to a conference. I think this is not the right way. They need to really to spend on themselves to keep themselves really ready for the future challenge that they've seen.
I think this is the era of learn, unlearn, and relearn. This is the one in order to keep pace with what's happening, right? So you need to, from time to time, to do this. Right? Unlearn what you have actually learned so far, and just go because the pace of technology is very fast, and we have to actually cope with what's happening around us. And if I may add to this one, so from corporate social responsibility perspective, that Mr. Fadi talked about it, and stitching this to basically to what we've been talking about from academy perspective. Even we as a corporate in Cisco, we have what we call Net Academy, right? So Net Academy, we're actually part of our corporate social responsibility is to educate people not only in Cisco technology and so many technologies that's happening in entrepreneurship, computer programming, network, soft skills, network programmability, all of these kind of data science, data analytics. So all of these things we have so far educated more than 9 million people, students, or people working for government worldwide. We have programs that we actually take people all the way to the US or Europe that we have taken them for 1 full year and then we re-inject them into the field. So this is part of our corporate social responsibility toward the industry or toward the society. So this is very important because we see there is a lack of skills, and we have seen this very prominent. So most of the technology that we have seen so far is becoming fully dependent on open source technologies, right? And open source is disrupting this industry entirely. And since we have open source and we have the data, we need someone to bridge this gap between both, right? So we need to have the right skills and the right people that actually can get those together, and we have something that's called Made in UAE, for example, like what the doctor said yesterday for Dubai University, right? So we need something to be made in our countries. So we have data now. We are beyond the era of oil, right? So data is the next generation oil.
Data is the new oil.
Is the new oil, okay. So basically what we need to do, we need to make use of this data, and this is our chance as an Arab world is to actually do something that's patent in here, right? So if we miss this generation or miss this gap, this era, I think we would be left behind big time.
Gavi, how do we close this?
So I think one of the things we can do in the short term, so there is a skills gap, but I don't think there's one skills gap in the realm of data. I actually think there are 3. And if you look at what we think of and what we mean when we say data science to be able to manage this, we're actually talking about 3 different things, 3 different skill sets that are nearly impossible to find in one person. So the approach we're taking, if we think we're looking for a data scientist or multiple data scientists who have all of the above, that's going to get us into a trap. We need to build data teams that bring the skills together. We need, yes, data engineering and data management technical skills, but we also need we need statistician analytical type skills, and maybe most importantly and most often overlooked, we need subject matter expertise. We need people who serve as principal investigators in their area of study. If they're going to manage and analyze the data around a city, they need to know how to think about city issues. Healthcare is different, education is different, business is different. So the mistake we may make is in identifying the skills gap as something where we need more quote-unquote data scientists, and a data scientist looks like this, but we can't find any of them. If instead we think, I have this problem to solve, and for it I need a team that consists of some engineering management skills, some analytical statistician skills, and some vertical subject matter expertise, some industry subject matter expertise, then we can form data teams that actually solve our problems.
Right.
Absolutely, and back to your CSR point, I know there are many technology companies that have a lot of programs for citizens, for students, and for companies. IBM has the PTech program and has the Digital Nation Africa. But I think the gap here is how do we align those programs from those corporate to what the students are studying in the university so they are immediately ready to be on the market as soon as they are done. I think we have 2 minutes left, so I will ask you, all of you, 30 minutes to summarize your key points around how we use data to fuel a smarter city and build the smart future that we all want to see for our next generations.
So maybe from my point of view is that we need to be more innovative in the services that we want to offer to our citizens. From that aspect, we will draw back all the lines backwards from technology, from data perspective, and how to utilize all of this for the good needs. Today, we are far away from this. We still focus on technology issues. We still focus on how to preserve the data, how to secure the data, while we are not even thinking about the service itself, where it's the most matter for us.
That's true.
For me, it's basically to have a purpose. You need to have a purpose, to be able to put together a team that have the right skills, and also be innovative, as my colleague indicated here, but and don't rely on the government basically to drive basically either innovation for you or to regulate you. So you need to be self-regulating because the pace of change is quite fast.
I can't agree more.
Yeah, that's true. I would like to go out with this key takeaway is we need a collaborative approach, 100%. It has to be there between as I said, the public and private sectors, both together with the citizens, and we need to open up to get more people to join and subscribe to our ideas, and we need to make sure that this is actually being taken down to the universities, to the schools. So this is the only way in order for us to strive in this data-driven economy.
Thank you, Javier.
And if I could leave everyone with one thought, it's to be vigilant about turning on its head what we keep finding ourselves doing, where we are focused more on the tools we have and look for problems to apply it to. What am I supposed to do about blockchain? What am I supposed to do about machine learning and AI and data science? And think about the problem. This is, for me, customer, customer, customer. What are the needs? What's the problem you're trying to solve? The tools will become more evident, and you'll be able to use tools that are available now. You won't have to be thinking, I need something that doesn't exist yet. Yeah. Right? There are plenty of problems that we have plenty of tools to solve, but we are not thinking problem first enough.
Great. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your valuable contribution. I hope the audience enjoyed the discussion here. We'll probably take one question of the audience, if there is any questions. I know it's late afternoon. If there are no questions, thank you all very much. And I hope if you need any discussion with our panelists, you will find them after the panel. Thank you all, and have a great afternoon.